Hello, I am Jason Sedita.
And I'm Carm Gaffredo.
And together, we are the founders and co-hosts of the NOFC podcast.
Our podcast focuses on first responder life and the issues affecting first responders, both active and retired.
We are both retired from the New York State Police, having worked two completely different backgrounds, one in uniform and the other as an investigator. Together we hope to inform and entertain you all.
Welcome to the NOFC podcast, episode 27 with our esteemed guest. I'll use Carm's word, Joseph Caputo. The podcast title is going to be Joseph Caputo uses pepper spray to season his meat. I would imagine that there's an explanation to this, and it's one of those things that's been eating at me, but I'm going to leave it for you guys to explain to that. Two things that are a first time. This is the first time we've been on this early. It's 4:00 in the morning here on the East Coast. No, it's not. It's 9:30, but it feels like fucking 4:30 to me. And Joe is our 11th guest. So congratulations, Joe. It feels like we haven't had a guest on in like 4 months. So Carm, go ahead and do your thing.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning,
from beautiful, sunny Greene County. So our guest is obviously Joe Caputo. He doesn't go by Joseph Caputo. He goes by Joe. He also goes by Chuck Norris. And the title that I came up with, Joe Caputo uses pepper spray to season his meat, is a play on Chuck Norris jokes, because everybody would make a Chuck Norris joke and adapt it to Joe Caputo at the barracks when I worked there. So Joe is retired state police investigator. He was assigned to the state police Catskill Barracks, assigned to the Bureau of Criminal Investigation. He served a total of 32 and a half years with the Division of New York State Police, 23 of which were in the Bureau, which basically means the plainclothes detective branch of the New York State Police. So he's got a very storied history about a lot of the things that he's done. He's done a lot of things. Joe, I know that at some point you served a brief stint down in at the Highland Barracks, right? At some point?
Correct. When I was first promoted to the Bureau, I went to Highland and worked under J.J. Gallagher for like 3 months before I was transferred back to Catskill.
Very cool. For the viewers, that basically means when he got appointed to a different level, they sent him somewhere else, and then he ultimately came back to the Catskill Barracks, where he remained for what seemed like an infinity in time. Joe, fun fact here, Joe Caputo actually conducted my state police employment background investigation.
What a mistake that was.
He was not a pleasant person to deal with when I was applying for a job. It was like being interviewed by Tackleberry from the old police movies. If anybody, I'm dating myself there, but he did a very thorough background investigation. I will say that. Joe's become a mentor and a good friend over the years. His gruff and grumpy outward persona is balanced out with a good human being inside who would actually take the shirt off of his back to help people out. He's counseled. He's been a wise counsel for a lot of people in our career. He's helped a lot of people learn the job. And when I say learn the job, I mean learn all of the ins and outs of the incredibly complex world of being an investigator for the state police. And ironically, when I got promoted to the Bureau in 2007, they sent me back to SB Catskill, and I walked into the back room with a bunch of stuff to put on my desk, and I'll never forget, because Joe Caputo was sitting on his desk in the corner of the room, and I looked over and I go, "Hi, how are you?" And his exact response was, and he turned around and started to type again.
I think that's the old school. I think that's that old school mentality. That's a super old school mentality for sure. And that's what we need a little bit more of nowadays. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, my desk was next to Joe for 5 years. And during my 5 years in that state police barracks, I learned more about how to do police work than any other point in my career, because you're just hit with so many cases so fast, so often, everything from rapes, robberies, homicides, unattended deaths, sex offense cases, major crazy sex offense cases. And I learned along the way from Joe, he became a really great help in my learning my police career. So you said yesterday, Joe, when I asked you how many murder cases you've worked, you said, I think you kind of guessed probably 50. I put in the framework many because I don't know how many that is, but you've worked more major cases over your 32 and a half years than probably more people, a couple of people combined in a different state police setting. So tell us a little bit about, if you don't mind, a little bit about I know you retired from state police. You had a giant party. It was a great party to go to where everybody really paid homage to how great of a human you are. And then you transitioned after a while to go back to work for the Greene County Sheriff's Office under the auspices of Sheriff Pete Kosmitsky, who is another great mentor and friend of mine. So tell us a little bit about what your assignment consists of there and your duties.
Work at the Sheriff's Office. I'm part of the Greene County Fire Investigation Team. So I was brought on with the Sheriff's Department to help run that through the Sheriff's Office now. So while I'm there, I do that. And then assist in the pistol permit division. We help the girls take in guns and do whatever background stuff we have to do. I assist with employment backgrounds, any criminal investigations, search warrants, whatever they need me to do, I'll help out with.
You're part of the Marine Patrol, I think you said too, right?
Yeah, I work the Marine Patrol whenever I can get out there, which is always fun.
Is this considered a full-time gig? Are you full-time?
No,
now?
it's part-time.
Oh, perfect. And how long you been doing that? Ever since you retired, or did you have some time in between?
I had a little short break when I retired before I started working. Almost, just probably a little more than a year. I had a break before I went to work for the Sheriff's Office.
And since you've retired and you went back into police work, what tends to be the favorite thing that you do there now?
I really enjoy the fire department stuff, the fire investigation stuff. I've been doing that since 1997. And the deputy chief on the county team now. So I really enjoy that. It's labor intensive work. It's a good feeling when you could get a successful conclusion on a case, that whether it be an arson case or whether it's, a fire or somebody lost everything in their house. It's nice to have them, give them what caused the fire. So it gives them a little bit of peace of mind, if nothing else, that they, wasn't something they did or that was something that they could have stopped or prevented. But I really enjoy that. I like the boat patrol, but I also like helping out in the pistol permits office. That's, it's always enjoyable helping people, get their stuff back or whatever.
If you would, tell us a little bit, like really complex arson investigations, typically what that encompasses, because most people out there have no idea what an arson investigator does or what the steps are, the collaborative steps with, maybe state fire and the fire departments and other police agencies. Tell us, if you would, give us a good overall picture of what that means to you.
Well, fire investigations, to the untrained eye, when you look at a structure, just this burned out, blackened out remnants of nothing. The thing is with the fire investigations, we go in there and we always try to, the nature of a fire, if it burns up evidence. So it's hard. It's one of the hardest cases to prove, because your evidence is being burned up or consumed by the fire as part of the fire. So we kind of go through there's a step process that you go through, outside to inside, least the greatest. So, you'll do a walk around the building, you'll look for the fire damage from the outside, see where's the least burn, where's the greatest burn. When you move inside, you do that same steps, least amount of damage, the greatest amount of damage, and you keep narrowing it down to, a floor or a room or an area of origin before you can pinpoint to an actual point of origin. When you get to your area or point of origin, then you just do a more detailed examination of that scene in that area and try to figure out what started it. We utilize some instruments to help us with some of that, with, sniffers or hydrocarbon detectors. On a rare case, we would use, a canine, accelerant detection dog. We don't have one, but we have access to agencies that do. So just to help pinpoint, if there's an accelerant present, in the point of origin, or if we have multiple points of origin, which is not normal in a normal fire. So if we have multiple points of origin, or we start seeing like splash patterns or pour patterns, then obviously it's something of an incendiary nature. So it kind of changes what we're looking at or how we're looking to gather information at that point. But it's, it's a very labor intensive investigation, because you'll have a fire and the building starts to collapse, or the ceilings will collapse into the floors, so you'll have the second floor collapse into the all the way to the basement, and you need to excavate that material. So it can be very labor intensive to do some of those investigations. We recently worked a case, ended up being a fatality, but ended up bringing in OFPC, which is the Office of Fire Prevention and Control through Homeland Security out of New York State. They have a technical urban rescue team that brought a tractor trailer in with a bunch of men, and they basically were able to shore up the basement of this 3-story building, so that we could excavate the first and second floors out of the basement to get to the room of origin, to come up with an origin and, what caused the fire. But we couldn't have done that without, the collaborative effort of all those agencies at that point. But the investigations are very labor intensive. Like I said, our team is made up of volunteers plus police officers. There's 5 members of the sheriff's department that are on the team, and then there's also one newly appointed state police investigator who just was recently promoted and transferred. So we're looking to get a replacement to assist with that. And then we have a bunch of volunteers that are volunteer firefighters. You have to be a Class A or B firefighter with a local county agency, and then you have to go through a vetting process to come on a team. And then once you're on the team, some guys have some training already, which helps. We have some volunteer guys that are on the fire department members that are on the team that are Class 1 or Class 2 certified arson investigators. And for people that don't really understand that, when you first become interested in fire investigations, you take some of the courses. It used to be under the old standards. You got level 1 first. You had to do so many hours of classroom training. Then you had to do like 25 hours of scene investigation before you would be certified by OFPC to be a level 1 certified arson investigator. Then the next step would be level 2, which was a 80-hour course that you had to take at Montour Falls, which is the fire academy out in Montour Falls, New York. You would go there as a residential academy for 2 weeks. At the end of that 2 weeks, you'd have to do an additional 50 hours of field certification with, I think it's a maximum of 4 hours for any specific scene. But you can have a scene that could last days. 4 hours is nothing for a fire scene, but you were only credited with 4 hours because they didn't want you taking 1 or 2 scenes and turn it at it. They want you to do a bunch of different scenes so you can get your certification. So I was a level 2 certified arson investigator, which is the highest that you could reach in New York State. Under the new standards, they've kind of taken away the level 1 and level 2, and you're just an arson investigator now. Same amount of training, maybe a little bit more. Additionally, I'm also a National Pro Board certified arson investigator, which means I have a national certification that's recognized across the whole country. It's something more recent that they came out with, and before I retired from the state police, I studied up for that and obtained that certification. So I have that also. So I could work basically anywhere in the country and be a certified arson investigator. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of dedication. The volunteers that have put forth the time and energy and training hours to get those certifications themselves have done it free. They don't get paid to go to the schools. They're doing it on their own time. Some of them are even taking time off of work so they can go to these schools and get trained. So more recently, we've changed some of the bylaws of our team, and we're allowing members to come in that don't have the training, and we use them as technicians, we label them, and it's basically like manpower to help us excavate some of these scenes. Because you're doing it by hand, you're literally doing it by hand. You're sifting through the material with your fingers or with hand tools, and then shoveling the material out, into a pile outside the structure. Sometimes it's done with buckets, depending on where we're at. So the newer members that come on that don't have the training, they're brought on to that part of the training, and then as they receive more training, then they're allowed to do more investigation part of it. As a new member of the team, they can't conduct an investigation by themselves. They have to have somebody that's certified on the team. to help do the scene. And then additionally, if we're collecting evidence at the scene, the way we do it is one of the police officers that's assigned to the team would collect any evidence, and then either would be maintained within the police agency's evidence, like we would turn it over to the state police, or the sheriff's department would keep the evidence for the criminal part of the case. But it's a lot of work. Like I said earlier, with the burned out structures, people look at it and they don't really recognize parts of a fire that would give them any indication of where something started. Like we look at, as I stated, least to greatest as far as damage, and the damage, charring or alligator char, the depth of char on the wood. We look at the amount of damage to the wood, and then additionally the consumption of those materials. So as the fire burns and grows, it grows up and out from wherever the point of origin is. So you'll have a burn pattern where the wood and the scene itself will have like extensive damage, and as you rise up and away from that area of origin or point of origin, your damage will lessen. So you'll end up having a V pattern on the wall where the wall and the wood is burned in like a V-ish pattern because it goes up and away. If you get a fire that's burning down, then that's obviously not normal. You have to look at why, whether it's just caused by drop down material from something above it dropping down and burning, or if there's a liquid that's poured down through the wall and running down into the next structure below. So those are all things you have to look at, and it's rewarding when you can look at a scene and figure out the fire path. And a lot of the investigation, being a fire department member, is a great asset because you learn fire path, fire travel. You learn what fire will do while it's burning based on the materials that are in the room, or the what they call fire load, which is the amount of objects that are in a room or in a structure. All of those things, and the other things that can change how fire travels through a structure is fire suppression efforts. So when we get there, we like to talk to the fire department members first arriving, and then guys that are inside the fire, fighting the fire, to see what they did, what they saw, what they smelled, what they, the color of the flame, color of the smoke. Sorry about that. Talking about fire, that's an insurance company investigator calling me. So it's a lot of work. But it is rewarding. Like we had a fire years ago, old farmhouse, structure fire, not a lot of damage, but enough. On the interior, it was a balloon frame construction. If you're not familiar with that, balloon frame construction is old style construction where the wall studs go from the sill plates at the first floor or basement area all the way to the second or third story without any fire breaks or no breaks. So if a fire starts on the first floor or basement, the fire can freely access all other floors by traveling through that wall stud area because there's no fire breaks in there. Newer construction, those are required to be in there, and it's to stop the fire from progressing from one floor to another, and whatnot. So that's stuff that you need to look at. But in this particular fire, we had fire that was progressing through these balloon frame construction, these voids in the structure, from one floor to another and into a staircase. But it wasn't making sense where the fire was starting. So we ended up having to rip a ceiling down in an adjacent room where there really wasn't fire damage, but we found fire damage within the void of the floor joist of the second floor. As we pulled the plaster and lath back on that ceiling, we ended up finding a wire that was shorted, and it had a horseshoe nail in it. Well, horseshoe nails are from like the 1920s and 30s, even maybe earlier, that was holding the floor down. Well, when they put the floor in, they put it right through. They had redone the floor in like the 40s or 50s, and they put a hardwood floor over the top of an existing plank floor. And when they used the old horseshoe nails to put it down with, they actually penetrated a wire. So from interviewing the homeowners, we found out that periodically they were getting a breaker that was tripping, and they would reset it. It would be fine for a while, and it would reset. What was happening from them walking on the floor, it had worn the inner insulation off the wire, and every once in a while for them walking, it would make contact with that nail, and it would short the circuit out. Well, over time, the breaker got weak, and it wouldn't trip. It was either tripping too much or it got heated, and the wire ended up before it was tripping, it was causing heat. Well, the heat eventually calcified the wood and started the wood burning, and it was an old structure. So then once it got burning, it traveled the length of that ceiling joist until it got to the wall. And then once it got in the wall and that balloon frame construction, it started traveling throughout the structure. But it was just one of those things. It's just a weird thing. And it was just knowing how fire travels and being able to look at the scene and figure out where things go. It's pretty rewarding. It's really rewarding. I mean, we have a lot of fires we go to. The damage is so extensive that either it's unsafe for us to get in there, or we can't figure out where it starts because there's not enough left for us to look at. But
Hey, Joe. So two things. I have two questions for you. Number one, let's just call it like a straightforward fire where it's like, let's call it a ground ball. Like in police work, a lot of times we call it a ground ball. So like, tell us, if you don't mind, what is a typical investigation look like time-wise for like a ground ball? And then what would you consider like a more intensive one? Like you said, that one where they had to bring in the tractor trailer of guys and they had to do some debris removal. So what is then a longer or one of the longest investigations that you would have to do? So if you can just do comparatively what you're looking at between the two.
well, the fire from where the OFPC brought their Tech S urban rescue team in, that was a two-day fire. It was the day of the fire, us digging in it, and then the next day morning, secured the scene. The next day in morning, OFPC with their tech rescue guys came in, and that was an all day. It was probably 4 or 5 hours of just shoring up material, putting in shoring in there to brace the floor and whatnot, and then start excavating some more and then bracing more. So that was an all day excavation, and that was 2 full days, so that was a pretty extensive one. Personally, that's probably one of the longer ones I've been involved with. I'm aware of, I don't know if you guys are aware of, the city of Troy had a big fire years ago, where some guy that was watching Forged in Fire decided he was going to go out in his backyard and start his own little Forged in Fire thing, and had a burn barrel and little coal pit or something, and ended up starting a fire, but it was like really windy. Well, he ended up burning down like a whole city block. So that one, the OFPC was there for like a whole week trying to figure out what started that before they figured out that it came back to this guy's backyard with his Forged in Fire little foundry thing. As just like a normal fire, if you want to call them, none of them are really normal. Everyone's kind of a little bit different, but you can have one where after the fire suppression efforts are done, and sometimes I'm a member of a local fire company, so a lot of times I'm at the scene of some of these fires. So we'll do the cause without bringing a team out, because my philosophy is if I'm already there, why call out more volunteers from my team to help come do the fire investigation if I can do it quickly. So I mean, we can do some of them where we're there for maybe an hour or two after the fire suppression's done, so that's an hour or two, 3 hours, maybe sometimes, if it's a quick, easy, if you're able to figure out that it's an electrical issue or there was a problem with an appliance, or from interviewing the homeowner, they saw sparks coming out of an outlet and you get looking at it and figure out what it is. I was at one this past week and we were able to luckily the homeowner had thrown the breaker off in the main panel box, which prevented, because during a fire, as your fire's burning, it's melting insulation off of wires. If the wires are energized, they're going to start shorting, and that'll start tripping breakers. So if all the breakers in the house are tripped, is it from a short circuit that caused the fire, or is it from short circuits from the fire, from the wires being energized during the fire? So luckily in this house, they had thrown the main breaker off prior to any fire department members getting there. So as a result, we ended up with one trip breaker in the house. We were able to trace that wiring back to the area of origin and figure out what caused that fire. So that was pretty quickly. That was without the team, but they can be, like I said, a matter of just an hour or two of work after the fire suppression's done to several days worth of investigation.
All right. Great podcast. Thanks, Joe. See you guys.
Oh, woo! All right.
You basically covered every question we had for
the
entire framework.
There's no questions left.
I have
God damn it,
nothing
Joe,
left.
you're supposed to let us fucking ask you a question or two.
I'm now eligible for Social Security after that.
You know, you really are a jackass.
You did that. It's actually a compliment in a way, because all the questions that I had, you answered while you were speaking. So good job. You did a great job.
Hey, Jay, very quickly. Did you just hear that the sound of the silencer? That's actually Joe's text message notification. It's a sniper rounds. So like, and the irony is that he works in pistol permits, and that's his notification tone.
I hear a lot of things in the background, by the way, which
hilarious.
We're gonna leave here, but regarding, let's trickle back to your 32 and a half years with the state police. Carm put in there that we wanted to discuss with you, like, some of your most fond memories. We'll start with that first. So what are the things that, like, when you look back, like, you just get nothing but like good, warm feelings about when you think of the state police? Or are there any?
Who's sitting next to me for 5 years, from 2007
Yeah,
to
that was like 10
2012.
minutes underwater. I think some of my best memories, I mean, I enjoyed the academy. I was one of those guys that really enjoyed the academy. I put weight on in the academy because it wasn't as strenuous as construction work. So,
that's a typical Joe Caputo statement. I had fun in the academy. It was less work than working in construction.
but
I like it.
I enjoyed after I got out of the academy, I got assigned to SP Hunter, which, for those of you that aren't aware, SP Hunter is a satellite office in Greene County, in the western part of the county, that covers the mountaintop towns, and has 2 ski areas, Hunter Mountain and Ski Windham. When I first started working up there, was actually a third. It was Cortina Valley. But that was a fun time working up in Hunter. I worked with some great people up there. Pete Kosminski was one of the first uniformed troopers I ever met and worked with up there. We became very close friends. And now I'm working for him again. He was a trooper with me. He got promoted to the bureau. I ended up getting promoted to the bureau. We worked as bureau guys together. He became a senior, eventually came back and was my senior at SB Catskill for a period of time. He retired, became the sheriff in Greene County, and then I retired and came over from the state police to the sheriff's office also. Pete actually, coincidentally, is a founding member of the Greene County Fire Investigation Team. He was one of the founding members when they started the team. And that's kind of where I got my interest in the fire part of it, because the team was formed back in the early 90s because they had a rash of fires occurring, like in Atanacaro, Durham, and Greenville. They had an individual that was burning a bunch of stuff. So there was a detail, including aviation and everything else, working night shifts, which back in the day was unheard of, that bureau guys were working night shifts. But we had uniformed troopers paired up with bureau guys trying to catch this guy that was doing fires. And I remember one particular night, we had 11 structure fires in one night. So we kind of did a lot of running around. I kind of gained an interest for that then. And when I got promoted to the bureau, Pete kind of talked me into, like, hey, join the team. So I did. That was in 90. I got promoted in 96. I joined the team into 97 is when I joined the team and started getting my training. And I've been part of the team ever since. When I first joined the team, Pete and I were the state police members assigned to the team. The sheriff's department had Ray Berg and Ray Miller as investigators assigned to the team also. And at some point then both Rays retired. Ray Berg has since passed away. You know, he was a great asset to the team. I learned a lot from those guys. I learned a lot from working with Pete on fires. And then for the longest time it was Pete and I, and then Pete got promoted and transferred out. So it was kind of me as the only law enforcement officer assigned to the team for a very long period of time, until more recently we started getting some sheriff's department members back involved with the team. And then now that I'm over there at the sheriff's department, the team used to be run under emergency services, which is the 911 dispatch center. Just more recently, the team got absorbed by the sheriff's department. So now the team is run completely underneath the sheriff's department and sheriff's office. So we have a budget line item through the sheriff's office now.
That's great, Joe.
And
that was not the question now. The question was, can you give us some of your best memories of the job?
No, wait, hold on. Carm, wait. So don't do that again. How about what are some of your worst memories on the New York State Police? Your worst. I'm gonna make. This is called. This is gonna be called spoon feeding.
Well, he just gave us his entire resume back to 1938, right? Like, so let's recenter.
If I keep talking, I'll have to listen to Carm then.
This is true. This is true.
Jackass, what are some of your best memories of the job? What are some of your best memories?
He was just asking me the worst. Which one do you want me to do first?
Well, we asked you first. What was your best memory? Give us your
That's fine. Go back. I know. We go ahead.
Brooke Hunter was some great times. Like I said, you had Hunter Mountain, so that was always fun dealing with the city crowd up there. And then summertime back in the day, Hunter Mountain had a bunch of festivals, so that was always busy and a fun time. As far as once I got into bureau, I mean, we worked so many countless crazy cases, week-long investigations on homicides where we didn't get any sleep for days on end. Like, we would basically go home and change our clothes and grab something to eat and go right back into work without sleep, and doing, lengthy interviews on some of these cases where you're interviewing suspects for 8, 9, 10, 11 hours and sometimes letting them go and then picking them back up another day, a couple days later, and re-interviewing them more before, it's really rewarding when you get that confession, when you finally hit that spot and, they start to talk. And once that floodgate opens up, you keep them talking. And those are some of the most rewarding cases. Like when you have, sometimes they're really hardened criminals, and you're never thinking you're going to get an admission from them, and you'll hit that right avenue or hit something that triggers them, and all of a sudden they start to talk. And then once you get them talking, then they start confessing. That's super rewarding. So a lot of those crazy, wacky homicide cases are just great cases to work.
Or the 40-hour home invasion cases remember those?
Yeah,
how many of those Joe, I will say this, Jay, Joe's temperament for those cases, he never stopped. Like, he would never take a rest. He would never lay low. He would never do anything to take a break. Even when we tried to get him to take a break, he never took it easy.
Yeah, how many days straight?
That's dirty.
I actually think that was like hour 40 of a homicide we were working on, honestly. And you just said I have to shut my eyes for 15 minutes.
Hold on a minute. Put that back up for a second. It's the same exact thing. You got that same mustache. That was probably the same exact mustache, the same color. Well, did you lose a lot of hair, or did you naturally have that?
No, I started cutting my hair like this when I was in the bureau, because my senior at the time, Dave Darling, had this thing. You're in the bureau, you're supposed to have hair. So I used to cut it shorter and shorter every time he complained. So it kind of morphed into this, and that's kind of where I keep it now, because it's easy to maintain.
Fair enough. So, like, I have plenty of things I could say about what I dislike about the state police, but what are some of the things that kind of was a thorn in your side that you didn't like, whether it was administratively or certain type of coworkers like Carmen Gaffredo, or whatever maybe tickled you the wrong way?
I think some of the stuff that really was not, they think some of the stuff with the state police, it's a little bit too much micromanaging, and then you have one boss saying one thing and then another boss changing it up. It's like you have the 10 troops, it's like 10 different police departments. Every troop does something different. And then within those separate troops, each zone will do something different based on whoever's in command of that zone at the time or whatever. And it's just, that gets a little frustrating. I mean, with the administrative part of it and the volume of paperwork as a police officer. Your job is basically like arrest people, solve crimes, but you end up, you know, the majority of your time is doing police work, is doing paperwork, like documenting all the steps that you're doing to basically show whoever that you conducted a thorough investigation. So that's a little frustrating sometimes when you have, you know, hours and hours and hours of paperwork on something that really doesn't really matter. But other than that, I mean, some of the other things I didn't really that bothered you or it was whatnot. It's some of the cases that we worked, whether it be the child, any kind of child abuse cases or like sex abuse cases involving children or children homicide, like child homicides. I dealt with a number of those in my career where either a family member killed a child or, you know, a parental substitute, you know, beat their stepchildren or whatever and caused a fatality. Those are probably some of the worst cases to have to work.
Yeah.
And you solve them because you want to make it right. But those, I don't care who you are or, you know, whatever, like I've dealt with thousands and thousands of death cases. And for the most part, they don't bother you, but anything involved with children or infants, that sticks with you. I mean, those are some of the cases that you know, you wished you never had to deal with, you know, but when you get a successful conclusion on them, those are some really rewarding ones when you get those.
Yeah. Well, thank you, because one of your first points, and I'm surprised because you're one of the first guests when we've asked this question that has come up with a few reasonable things that you dislike about the job, and that was one of my things. Is that literally we're all from Troop F, so within Troop F, Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, depending on where you're at, it's like you're in a completely different police agency. And that was
Yeah.
one of the things that really didn't make any sense to me. We're supposed to be uniform across the board. So how is policing an hour away so much different from it is down here in Orange County? You know, and I guess some of the arguments are you're dealing with a different volume of crime, but how does that make any difference? You should be dealing with
Yeah,
it
I
the
mean,
same.
I mean, the job does things right. It just sometimes there's a little bit too much micromanaging, and I think it's
Yeah.
just a lot to do with the bosses. And then some of the bosses are really good at what they do. I mean, I've worked for some really, really great bosses on, you know, the station level, you know, Pete Kosminski, Scott Youngblood, you know, Dave Darling, JJ Gallagher were my four seniors that I worked for. And Billy Fitzmaurice was a senior at the end just before I retired. So I mean, they were great bosses, but they did the job. Like they were great troopers. They were great investigators. They were great seniors. And those types of bosses know what it's like to do the job that you're doing. And I think we have a lot of bosses on our job that came on a job, maybe not necessarily to be troopers. They came on for the pay. More recently, it's more for the pay. There's still guys that come on that want to be troopers, and that's, you know, don't get me wrong. There's a lot. There was a period of time where it seemed like we were recruiting people based on the pay that we were making. So we ended up with a lot of people that were doing the job because they wanted the pay and didn't really necessarily like being a trooper. So, well, let's become a sergeant. And we have guys that are becoming sergeants that really have maybe 6 months on the road, and now they're supervising troopers, telling them what to do. And sometimes they micromanage, and then they don't like being a sergeant. They study, and then all of a sudden they're a lieutenant, and then they're a captain, and they're higher. And they've never really had to do the job. I mean, you're supposed to have 4 years on a job to take the sergeant's exam, but it's not 4 years on the road. It's 4 years on a job. And it potentially could be 6 months worth of road time before they end up in some detail or back at the academy as an ATO. So I think that I always had a mindset that you should have like 8 years on a job before you could take your first sergeant's exam. You know, that way you're credited, you know, that person has done the job. You can't, it's not impossible to hide for 8 years, but for the most part, if you got 8 years on, you have a little bit of time on the road somewheres. So you should have an understanding of the job. And I think to be a really good boss, you need to have an understanding of the job and what the job is that those troopers or investigators are doing. And I think that's, you know, looking at some of the other bosses that I've had, you know, the bigger bosses, Steve Nevins, Eddie Rasso, John Melville, Wayne Olson. They were some amazing bosses, but they did the job. They were great investigators, great troopers, great supervisors on the lower level, on the NCO level and whatnot, before they became bigger bosses. Pat Regan was another one that, and Bobby Nuzzo. They were amazing bosses.
Yep.
But they lived, eat, and breathed the job, but they didn't forget where they came from. And there's others out there,
Pierce Gallagher,
and other
that's
troops.
another one.
Scott Don, yeah, there was those
Scott Don,
guys.
Pierce Gallagher.
They were just some really, really good bosses, but they were great cops, and they didn't forget where they came from. And I think that's, need to get back to the days. It's old school. Yeah, it's old school. But I think that gives the guys on the job a great guidance. As far as that they know that their bosses have their back. And they're not getting micromanaged or nitpicked over, stupid stuff. But, it's a great job. I stayed as long as I did. I worked 23 years in Catskill's back room. I should have had my head examined for staying there that long, but I enjoyed the job. I would have liked to have made senior in troop, but it didn't happen. But I don't have any regrets. I mean, I stayed as long as I did. I stayed 32 years. I was going to leave. And then my son got hired by the sheriff's office and was in the academy at the time. So I wanted to be working when he graduated. So I stayed that extra 6 months, but it's a great career path.
And you got good kids, especially your son, Joey Jr. He's a talented young man and has proved himself to be a great deputy. So obviously be proud of that. On a lighter note, a much later note, if you would tell us about the roadkill at your desk.
So, yeah, for those of you who don't know, SP Catskill was a jokester station, the forgotten Zone 4 of Troop F that didn't exist. But our station was always a lot of fun, and the fact that we always were busting chops and doing stuff. Well, one day I came in and there was a dead deer propped up in my chair at my desk. Because the A-line decided that they were going to have some fun and put that there. I've had
for the hold on a second, Joe. For the listeners and our viewers that aren't viewing right now, as Joe's speaking, Carm's holding up a picture of that said deer in his chair. So go ahead and view that
with his nameplate.
It looks that's pretty funny.
Yeah, and that was pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of stuff like that. We had that's how they brought it back to the station. They told the trooper he had to put it between the grill push bars and the hood and bring it to the station that way.
That's awesome. By the way, Joe, what I may do after hearing that text message go off about a dozen times, I will probably do a little clip of that playing while you're speaking, and we'll share that because that is amazing. I love the silencer.
Yeah, you can't find that anymore. The new woke crowd.
Well, yeah, I would bet that you're. Yeah,
I had to save that from my old Android phone to a soundbite and then put it onto my Apple phone. But I think a good funny story about Catskill busting chops. When Scott Youngblood was a senior, one of our members had just gone to polygraph school. So we didn't have a polygraphist in Catskill at the time. Whenever we had to do polygraphs, we always had to go to like Kingston or Middletown to get a polygraph done. So it was a great asset to have a polygraphist in our squad. But we didn't have a poly suite. So we had talked, Catskill's barracks obviously is not division owned. It's a rental. We had talked to the landlord we had a conference room, about cutting out a section of the conference room to make a little small polygraph suite office. So we ended up, got permission from the landlord to do it. And we got funds from I believe it was the district attorney's office. And we brought the material to do this poly suite. So Scott Youngblood and I did this building, and put a new doorway in the hallway, built the poly suite, had it all sheetrocked up, painted the whole 9 yards. Go home. This is over a course of like 2 weeks. one morning I come into work, I go walking up the hall to the front like I did every morning to go check the blotter. And as I walked,
And I was right behind him
suite,
when he was walking. I was walking right behind you, if you remember.
the poly go past where the poly suite doorway was, and it's no more. It was completely sheetrocked over, spackled, taped, and painted, and new molding covering up where the doorway was on both sides of the wall. The guys had sheetrocked over the wall in the middle of the night and closed it all off. It was kind of funny.
But not only did they sheetrock it off, Jay, they actually spackled it, waited it for it to dry, sanded it, spackled it again, wait for it to dry, and then they painted it over so that it looked like this room never even existed. And it was one of those funny moments where I forgot if it was Scott or you, Joe, but I think I thought it was Scott that noticed it first. Scott was reading the morning paper as the senior investigator. He always read his morning paper, the Greene County paper, and he stops dead in his tracks, and he looks to the right, and he looks at the wall, and he goes, "What the fuck?" It was completely enclosed and completely done in a matter of 12 hours, and it was one of the funniest pranks that I've ever seen, and it turned out that one of the previous sergeants and another trooper had done the overnight construction to close it back in. And
funny after the fact was then we went in the inside of the conference room where this doorway was, and we knocked a hole in the sheetrock, and I took the sergeant's uniforms out of his locker. I stuffed them all in the wall along with his issue weapon and all the empty magazines and all those empty rounds, along with all the shredder paper into the wall, and took a picture of his patch on the wall. And then Scott called the sergeant up like, "Hey, you sent Joe over the edge. He broke his hand." So I had I had broke my hand at work a few months prior to that. So I still had the brace on my desk from when I was wearing that. So I had put that back on and took another picture of it on my hand again, so that I lost it when I saw that I sheetrocked it all over him. When I punched the wall, I hit the stud and broke my hand again. So that was, they were busting the sergeant's chops. So he was found the rest of his stuff in the wall after the fact. He had the hand sort through all the shred paper.
Those are the good old days for sure. That's fucking
hilarious. Oh my God, yeah. And then
the Annoyatron. Tell us about the Annoyatron.
The Annoyatron. That was God rest his soul. Dave Lane was a trooper at our barracks. Was military vet who had a sense of humor that was right along the same lines as the rest of us at our barracks. And we instantly fell in love with him when he worked there. He actually trained in Catskill, transferred out back to his hometown in Watertown, worked there for a short period of time, and decided he wanted to come back to Catskill. And he came back to Catskill, and then he ended up being killed in the line of duty in a on-duty traffic accident. But he bought this thing called an Annoyatron, and it basically was like a cricket chirp, and it would alternate times and volumes. So he would put it in places around people's desks. He had put it at my desk one day, and it took me a little bit of time to figure out where it was, but I found
it was above, for reference, Jay, the Annoyatron, Dave Lane put it in the above the ceiling tile in the drop ceiling above Joe's desk. And Joe kept throughout the day was like, "What the fuck is that sound? Where is that coming from?" And it just built slowly and slowly and slowly to where he was losing his mind. He was losing his mind. And Dave kept checking back to see if he had discovered it yet throughout the day. God rest his soul. And Joe ended up finding it, because Joe normally ends up finding out everything anyway. So it was just a hilarious moment. The Annoyatron kept going and going and going. And
we then put it under another investigator's desk, and he couldn't find it because it was on the slide out tray for where your computer sits on, but it was magnetized. So we put it up underneath the tray, and it was in there so long that the batteries died on it because it kept chirping for weeks on end. But
that's a long time.
Yeah. Dave was funny. He was always doing something. Then he did the random keystroker. That was a great story.
Oh, God.
He bought this device called a random keystroker. So he would hook it to the computer. So when you started typing, you would type normal, and all of a sudden it would start changing what you were typing. So he put it on the sergeant's computer to bust one of the sergeant's chops, and they started typing on it, and it started messing up. So they just like, oh, well, and just turn the computer and like shut their stuff down and just, I'll do it later. Well, that night, the A-line sergeant comes in and starts working, and that thing starts doing it, and they think there's a security breach. So they like unplug the computer. They like call division. They got everybody and their brother trying to figure out what's, where this breach occurred. Well, ends
But
up.
this is like 1 a.m, right? This is 1 a.m.
It was like early morning. So 7 o'clock in the morning.
So they woke up
to work.
They woke up at 2 a.m. They woke up a captain who was in charge of like information security, IT security. So they woke up this captain. It turned into this giant thing of like, what the fuck is going on? Are we hacked? It was a pretty substantial thing that they woke this captain up, and they end up coming to find out that it's somebody put this random keystroker in the back USB port of the desktop computer. And Dave came in the next morning, and go ahead, Joe, you could finish the rest of it.
So he comes in, and there's all this stuff going on, and he's like, oh, wait a minute, that was me. I did that. Like, it was a joke. Like, so I know Tron and a random keystroker, we got the keystroker back from IAB, and it hangs in a picture frame in the Catskills back room in memory of Dave. So,
yeah.
But yeah, that was
That's awesome.
That was the kind of stuff
coming
that
up
on a daily basis, messing with each other. Those are some great memories.
Dave was one of those guys that when the job was the job, he was the first one to jump on the pile. And he was also the first one to joke around and have fun. And he was truly, obviously, one of our very good friends. And it's actually coming up November 4th of this year will be, 17 years, Joe? 2009, so...
2009, so it's 16.
16 years. It would be 16 years since his passing. November 4th, a day that none of us will ever forget there. But, yeah, great memories and great comedic fun that we had over the years. It was definitely, I think, one of the two of the funnest places I've ever worked, for sure. And the level of camaraderie there amongst the people that we worked with was unbelievable.
Well, it was a tight-knit family. It's like we did some crazy cases together, and when you work cases like that, it just you become very, very close. It's like you spend more time with guys at work than you do with your own family sometimes, it seems like. But it was a
Jay,
great time.
For the 5 years that I was there and the 5 years that my desk was right next to yours, I'm kind of on a, not to be corny, but my friendship with you grew tremendously over that time, because anytime I had a question about something, or like, hey, Joe, what the fuck do I do? Joe was the first one to offer guidance. He was the evidence guy. Like, he was great with, making sure that everything was squared away and done properly. And he was the first to lend a helping hand to anybody in the back room that needed guidance on how to do something. And not for nothing, but not that trooper work isn't difficult, but when you're in the bureau, it's a completely different level of comprehensive understanding, from search warrant affidavits to evidence, to interviewing suspects in interrogations, to doing forensic interviews of children. So I consider myself incredibly lucky. I know we bust each other's balls endlessly, and people have said all the time, oh, you guys are so roughing each other. It's out of love. And I have nothing but the highest respect for Joe, because he's been a great friend and help to me in my career and personal life. So,
thank you.
I know I've never said it before, but thank you. I appreciate everything you've done for me, Joe.
Why the fuck are you saying that now? You've had all these years to say it, and this is the first time you're saying it?
I'm saying it to everybody who's watching. He's
He's always.
Well, actually, to your point, I will say this much. I find that the closer you are with somebody, the more you bust their chops, right? That's what I think. That's a very common thing. The closer you are, because you know how much they can take, and then you know that even if they overreact and they take it the wrong way, for somebody I know that's sitting on the left of the screen right now, you know that eventually they'll get over it and you'll continue to be friends. I'm just joking, Carm. You're great. I'm just messing with you.
Well, that said, there's been times where Joe and I, we were working next to each other for 5 years, where there were times where we were fucking screaming at each other, yelling at each other. And that's not uncommon. When you work in a close quartered place, that you're yelling at each other. And then 20 minutes later, it's like, okay, what are we
Oh,
doing for
it's-
lunch? You know what I mean?
It's like
That's the way it
it's
is.
like brothers. You're freaking fighting in the sandlot today, and tomorrow you're best friends.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
like I said, it was a great place to work. Hence why I stayed there for 23 years. I had some awesome coworkers during that time. Lifelong friendships because of their
And that
job.
said, too, Joe, you were, if I remember correctly, you were offered, like, people had suggested, people who were very high in the command structure had suggested that you might want to consider putting in for major crimes, which is a very prestigious and coveted spot. And you turned it down because of your loyalty to the Greene County area and your loyalty to the job in Greene County. So, you were offered to do different things and you declined them because of that loyalty. And that's something
Well,
that's
you know,
very commendable.
I had been offered to go to Albany, a couple different places to make senior up there, but I wanted to make senior in troop. I enjoyed working in Greene County. I would have loved to have been a senior there, but it didn't work out. I don't have any regrets for it. My career as an investigator was, very fulfilling. Like I said, that's why I stayed there for 23 years. If I didn't like the job, I wouldn't have stayed, doing that there. But I love the job. I love the guys I work with that more so than anything. And I don't miss it. I don't miss the division part of some of the stuff, but I do love the job. The guys, I had some great coworkers.
Yep. And you're fortunate now that you're at a good spot with great people.
Oh yeah. And it's, I'm doing, like you used to say, why are you still doing that? It's like, I still enjoy doing it. I love doing it. But there's no stress. Like there's nobody looking over your shoulder. There's no stress. There's no aggravation. There's no karma breathing down my neck every minute.
Well, you're also
But-
lucky because you have a tremendous sheriff in Pete, and you have a
That's-
tremendous undersheriff
Pete's-
in Tracy. You
Pete's-
couldn't find two better people, honestly. So
Yeah, Pete's my best friend. Like I said, we were troopers together. We were investigators together. He ended up being, my boss as a senior.
Yeah.
It's, I can't say we're in the fire department together, both same fire company. So it's it's because of their job that we are those friends. Like I said, I love the job. I love the people that I work with. So I had a lot of great memories because of their job. A lot of great friends developed because of it also.
Joe, before we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to add? Anything that you want to discuss? Anything you want people to know about you that we haven't discussed? Which I know that's a leading question because you could go on another 45-minute tangent, but I have to ask that.
No, it's just no, nothing else really other than that the new division's recruiting video looks like a pretty good thing. They finally got back away from the
Thank you.
stupid
Thank you for
ones.
saying
This
that.
last one, it
And
just
we
came out
shared
recently.
that.
It looks really good.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
you said, finally. Yep. Well,
is there anything you want to talk about, Joe, other than work stuff?
No, we're good.
We're
No.
good.
Enjoying retirement,
All right.
enjoying my grandson, working a couple
Good.
hours here and there to give me some spare money for the toy
That's
fund.
awesome.
Yep.
Good. I see that you're
Absolutely.
displaying your 3-pointer up behind you. That's beautiful.
3. That's
I'm
an
just
8,
joking.
you jackass.
It's 8.
That's
Oh,
one
just
of
joking.
that's one of the smaller ones.
Yeah, no, I'm joking. I don't hunt, so
That's
but
what she said.
it's a great great. Thank you very much, Joe, for coming on. We
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you.
it.
No,
You did very
glad I
well,
could
and we
come
appreciate you
in for a
being
little
on.
bit.
As always, Carm, tell them what they need to do.
If you like us, please show that on the different pages. Share our posts. Please subscribe. We love the feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. And we are honored to be able to provide the content for you and to entertain and to help. We appreciate having Joe Caputo on, as well as all of our guests. Joe, you did a phenomenal job. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Guys, keep in touch, and be well.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate you.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks.
All
Joe,
right.
stay on.